Hey Metalheads, welcome to our third edition of the Metal Wire podcast. I'm Carol, your Metal Princess. Our guest this month is Joe DiBiase, the bassist from the infamous Fates Warning. Joe talks to us about his time in Fates Warning as well as what he's currently doing and tells us some stories about his time while in the band. Just an FYI, there were some technical difficulties while recording the podcast, and there are a couple points where Joe catches on to the questions even though he had a little bit of a hard time hearing me. So thanks for that, Joe. Anyway, on to the interview. Enjoy.
Hey, Joe. Thanks so much for joining us today. How are you?
Hi, Carol. I'm great. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much. So let's get started. Let's start out with what inspired you to become a musician and how did you get started in your career?
It's kind of funny you asked that because I happened to listen to your last podcast with Dan Lorenzo, and he said, KISS, and bingo. Because there was three of us in the neighborhood, and the two other guys played guitar, and we all loved KISS, and we needed somebody to play the bass, and that was me. I was, I don't know, 11 or 12, something like that, and that's what started the whole thing off. It just went from there. Yep. So we'll blame KISS too.
I think a lot of musicians blame KISS for their start. What would you say was the album that got you saying, I want to do this?
I must have been in like 8th grade, and I think that's when like Destroyer came out. So it was right around Destroyer or Rock and Roll Over. Or nowadays, I mean, I like the first three albums better than those two albums, but I think Destroyer's the one that started it for me. And Aerosmith, old Aerosmith, Poison in the Attic. I think it's the first album I ever actually bought.
Great album.
So, yeah, those are the albums I started on. And plus, I had older brothers and sisters who turned me on to a lot of good music at an early age. You know, UFO and Thin Lizzy. My brother's like 6, 7 years older than me, so I grew up listening to that stuff whether I wanted to or not. So
wonderful.
Yep.
So how did your start come with Fates Warning? I know that you started it with a few other famous people in the band.
I was actually sleeping out for Black Sabbath tickets on the Born Again tour at the old New Haven Coliseum, which is no longer there. But I was kind of a ticket scalper. It's kind of how I survived back then. I'd sleep out for all the concerts and sell the tickets. And these three bum-looking guys come up to me and looking for tickets. And it was Steve and Jim and Vic from the original Fates Warning lineup. And we started talking about all the kinds of music we liked, and we all liked the same weird bands that nobody ever heard of at the time, like Accept and Picture and all these obscure bands. But that's pretty cool. So we were talking for a couple hours, and they said they had a band together and they're looking for a bass player. And I just happened to dabble a little bit in that. And a couple of weeks later, I went up. They lived about an hour from me, and we jammed a few Iron Maiden songs and Accept songs and stuff like that. And Fates Warning was born. They actually weren't even called Fates Warning at that time.
What was the original name?
At the time, they didn't have a name. And all of a sudden, we needed a name quick because we had our first gig coming up. So we chose the ill-fated name Misfit because that was one of our songs that we had written at the time. That didn't last long because the actual real Misfits threatened to sue us about a week later. So we ended up taking Fates Warning, which is a line from the song The Calling in the first album. And Steve Zimmerman came up with it. Fates Warning. So that was no great meaning to it. It was just a lyric in one of the songs.
And how did John Ark get into the band?
John was also in the band at that time with the other three. He just wasn't looking for Black Sabbath tickets that day. It was just the three of them. So John was already actually part of the band. But at that time, they were really playing covers. I think they had 2 or 3 songs they were working on, that ended up on the first album. I think Buried Alive, the first song on the first album they had written already, and maybe a couple other ones. But they were mainly just playing covers and stuff, Then once I joined, they decided to make it official, and we started playing nothing but our own songs.
Right. And you were in the band from 1982 to 1996. So you went
something
through
like
different
that.
vocalists, different lines, things like that. Was there a big change with John versus Ray singing?
Yeah, there was a huge difference. First of all, after the second album, after Spectre Within, we got Frank Oresti as guitar player to replace Vic. Mm-hmm. And that was a big change. They're totally different style of guitar players and writers. But obviously, with the change of vocalist, that really changed things. For better or for worse, depending on which side of the fence you're on that. You're either a John Arch guy or a Ray guy, it seems. And there's a few people that like both, but...
I like both.
Yeah.
I think John has a very unique voice, and I think Ray has a great voice also. I think they're just very different.
I like them both equally. There's completely different styles, and the music styles are also so different from Awaken the Guardians and No Exit. I mean, actually every Fates Warning album that I was on anyway, the styles change every album. It was just a natural progression, different writing. We matured as writers and performers, and we didn't want to make the same album twice, you know. And plus, with each member changed, its style changed automatically. Even like when Steve Zimmerman left after No Exit, we got Marzano to play drums. That completely changed the style, almost as much as the vocals. It was a completely different style. Made it more progressive, less heavy, you know. So a combination of us maturing as writers and the different member changes created a different sound of the album, which was kind of cool.
Was the influence for the music some of like the people who were around at that time, like the Priest and Maiden and, you know, Queensryche and, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Queensryche kind of came up at the same time as us, so I can't really say they influenced us because, like, they kind of were coming out at the same time. We were more influenced by some older bands because John was a little older than us, and he was a huge Uriah Heep fan, and we were all big Thin Lizzy fans, and we liked a lot of the older, original Sabbath, that kind of stuff, and Thin Lizzy we were all big fans of. And of course, some of the more obscure bands that I was talking about earlier were really into Merciful Fate at the time before anybody else really was. Loudness when they first came out. So we had some influences from the older 70s stuff and some of the newer guys too. We tried not to steal too much. And as we progressed, you know, especially after the first two albums, we developed our own style, I think. The first two albums, you can hear other band styles stand out some more, but I think from Awaken the Guardian on, it was Fates Warning style, you know.
How would you see it classified as progressive? Not necessarily from, no, that was really I think it's more of a...
Yeah, I'm kind of losing you a little bit. It's hard to hear your question, but I think you were saying, do we classify us as progressive metal? A lot of people say we were the original progressive metal band. I mean, I don't know if that's true or not, but Awaken the Guardian, a lot of people claim was the original progressive metal album, and that we were kind of pioneers in it, which is very flattering. Not sure if it's 100% true or not, but it's nice to hear that. But you know, us and Dream Theater all kind of came out at the same time, and Queensryche, like you said, and we were into progressive music as it was, not progressive metal, but like, you know, Marillion, Jethro Tull, I guess you consider kind of progressive. So we were into more intricate stuff musically as it was, and we just incorporated some of that into heavier music, and hence, I guess, progressive metal. There's a lot of bands out today that I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. There's a lot of bands out today that they call progressive metal, which I don't call anything like Fates Warning at all. Newer bands, drawing a blank, of course, on some of the names. I have a son who's 23, and he likes a lot of that, you know, more modern stuff that they call progressive metal, which kind of boggles me. It's good stuff, but I don't hear progressive really stuff in it. Like, you know.
Yeah, I think it's a little hard. I think a lot of people confuse power metal sometimes, and I think there's different styles, and I mean there are crossovers in it, but I guess it's, you know, I think power metal's a little more distinctive. I think progressive is a good way to explain it. Yeah,
like I think Periphery is one of the bands I'm trying to think of, really great, talented musicians, and it's very musical stuff. But I don't, you know, hear a lot of Fates Warning in it. Maybe a little bit of Dream Theater in it. I think actually John Petrucci actually plays on a couple of their songs. But that's a really good band. I don't hear, you know, it's kind of different than what we were doing back in the day. But it's
are there any bands now that you hear that you say, wow, that we influenced them?
I mean, nothing that really stands out. I mean, there's a lot of bands that claim that we were influences on, which is again very flattering. I don't listen to a lot of that type of music these days, like a lot of progressive newer bands. It's just not what I'm really into listening to. But I'm sure there is a lot of good bands. There's a few good bands out there, like Hawken, bands like that I like that are on the progressive side. But I listen to a lot of different types of music, not just metal or progressive metal.
Right. You left the band in 1996. What caused your departure from the band?
Kind of a complicated question without a really easy answer, but it was a combination of disillusionment. Like, for instance, Parallels was supposed to be our big album, and we all thought we were well on our way to being whatever, a big band, and a big MTV band, and a headlining type band. And Metal Blade had signed a deal with Warner Brothers that was going to give us major label distribution and so forth for that album, and then at the last minute, they pulled that right in the middle of the tour.
Ooh.
And that kind of hurt. So Parallels, the big album everybody said was going to break us, just kind of died right in the middle of the tour. And, we never ended up doing our big tour. And they chose the Goo Goo Dolls instead, Warner Brothers did, because they can take one band.
Okay.
I guess they were going to take two bands from Metal Blade, and it was going to be us and the Goo Goo Dolls. And if I remember if that it was correct, the Goo Goo Dolls ended up being the band they took, so it kind of left us high and dry. So the next album was Inside Out, and we were not in great frame of mind. We were kind of, as a band, disillusioned. So, and we did a great, I like Inside Out, but it's got a different vibe to it. You can almost tell, and lyrically and some of the musically, our state of mind at the time. We ended up doing a good tour. We toured with Dream Theater in the States and in Europe. It was a really successful tour, fan-wise, but the whole situation started to kind of affect our relationships. We weren't getting along all that great because of what had happened, and I was drinking a lot, and that was causing a problem. And then after the tour ended, it was an unspoken thing. Me and Frank both kind of knew that was going to be it. We just kind of looked at each other and we knew. We couldn't wait for that tour to be over. Couldn't wait. So we decided we're all going to take a long break from each other in the whole music scene and kind of regroup in a year or whatever it was. And in the meantime, I had my son came along, and I just started to think of it as a job. I kicked myself in the ass for it. Now I wish I didn't do it, but at the time I thought it was the right thing to do. I was just going to step away. Relationships within the band wasn't great. The whole music scene was kind of going against us, and like I said, I had my son, and then a job opportunity came up, which I still have to this day. So at least the job is still there. And like I said, I was away from my daughter a lot when she was younger, and I didn't want to do that again to my son. So I just decided to call it a day. So it's a combination of disillusionment with the whole music scene, the whole vibe, and family issues and such like that. Again, I don't have regrets what I did, but it's in the past now. I did it for the right reasons, but actually slowly but surely I've kind of made my way back into the business, which is cool.
Right, which is the next thing, actually.
That's a good segue.
Yes, you just played perfect segue, actually. You did 3 shows with the band now. How did that come about? And I know that there was someone else who's somewhat famous in the industry who was playing in Fates Warning that you were for time.
You broke up there a little bit at the end, but I just did during their last tour. Joey Vera, their current bass player, had to do a show with Armored Saint in Europe. So they needed somebody to fill in for 3 days. So I was more than happy to do that. I learned a bunch of the newer stuff that I hadn't played on, which wasn't all that bad because I had actually done it the previous year. I had done. I went to Europe because Joey had another conflict. So I did a show at the Sweden Rock Festival and another show in Germany. So I had already kind of learned a lot of that newer stuff. So then when they asked me to do these 3 shows, I jumped off the chance. It was great to lived that life again, hang out in the tour bus and hang out with Queensryche, which was a lot of fun because they were supporting Queensryche. So I knew all those guys, so that was fun to hang with them.
Which Queensryche?
The Todd LaTorre Queensryche.
Okay. Now there's two nowadays, so.
Yeah. This is the one they still call Queensryche, so, Michael Wilton and
Right.
Eddie Jackson and Todd LaTorre, and I know those guys, so that was really cool. Todd is a really, really good guy.
Right.
And speaking of Todd, I kind of had a connection with him already because I had played 2 songs on Glenn Jover's latest project, which was called Walls of Blood. He had, he didn't really know what to call it. He ended up calling it Walls of Blood as a project, but like different singers on each song, different bass players and such. So I played out 2 songs on that album, and Todd LaTorre had sung on one of them, a song called Discordia. So we had that connection. We hit it off really good, and we're hoping to continue to do something. It's definitely, me and Glenn Jover and his brother Sean are gonna work on a project, and we don't have a singer yet. Now Todd's actually into doing it. We don't know if it's going to work out logistically or whatever, but that'd be kind of cool if he did that with us. That's the other thing I'm kind of working on.
Took over for Midnight Glory, so.
Yes, yep, he did, yep.
Which he was a really good fit, I have to say, for that.
Yeah.
He
really
was a very good fit.
There's some live videos out there of him doing some of the older tunes that are just great. Really, really good job he did. Yeah, I was a huge fan of Crimson Glory, actually. They're really good.
Yeah, they're definitely. Would you say you and Crimson Glory were, Fates Warning and Crimson Glory were in the same genre, like compatriots in the scene?
Yeah, I would think so. They were maybe a little bit more power metal than progressive metal, but yeah, I was a huge fan of that first couple albums. The first album was just a classic.
Yeah, Midnight had an awesome look, sure.
Yeah. I think it was just the anniversary of Midnight's passing yesterday, or sometime this week, actually, too.
Oh, you know who else, too? Today is Ronnie James Dio's birthday, actually.
Yeah, that's right.
I have to cover that tomorrow. So now bringing current day, let's talk about what you're currently working on.
Yeah. Okay, besides the Glenn Jover thing, which I just went over, we don't have a name for it yet or anything, but it's definitely me and Glenn. His brother, Sean, is probably going to play drums. In fact, him and Glenn are writing some stuff now. And we still have to find the singer. It's probably going to be a slow-moving process because Sean lives in Atlanta, Glenn lives in Toronto, I live in Connecticut, and we don't have a singer yet. But it's something we're kind of working on in our spare time. But I also, I actually just did a song on the new Arch and Fayes album, which is, Jim Fayes and John Arch, the original singer from Fates Warning, just did their second album. And I played on one song on that. I was really happy to do that. Glad they asked me to do that. It's great that I get along with all these guys again, because when I left the band originally, the relationship was kind of fractured. So it's really, really good that I, it's good to keep not burn the bridges, because now we get along great.
Exactly.
And when they need me to fill in, it really works out well, and they play on their projects and stuff. But a lot of it was my fault. I did mention that I was kind of hitting a bottle pretty good at one point, which I stopped that. So it's been about 10 years since I fooled around there. So it's opened a lot of doors for me to be able to do that. And besides that, I play in a band out of New York called the Good Rats, who have actually been around since the 70s.
Oh, okay.
Obviously not the original band anymore. In fact, speaking of anniversaries, today, that we're recording this, the original singer of the Good Rats was a guy named Pepe Marcello, who he was a Long Island guy, and he wrote a lot of songs for a lot of other artists too. He was the singer and the leader of the Good Rats, and today is the 6th anniversary of his passing. Speaking of anniversary days. But now the Good Rats consists of his son, Stefan, is sings.
Okay.
And I play the bass, and my son, Joey, plays the drums.
Oh.
And then we have a keyboard player named Dan Smaraglia. So it's really cool to play all these old classics, because we live in New York. Yeah, that's where you are too, I know.
Yes, I am.
Good Rats were a big deal back in the 70s and 80s, and there's still pockets of old Good Rat fans around this part of the country. So We play mostly around Connecticut, New York, New Jersey. You know, little clubs and stuff. We do some bigger shows. We did a show with Voice of Cult last year. And we're actually doing a show here in Connecticut in September with the $1 Billion Babies, who is Alice Cooper's original band.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so we're doing that. And
what are
busy,
you playing?
So.
What type of songs are you playing? Are you playing?
Well, we played,
covers?
all Good Rats music. We do a few covers depending on the venue and the crowd, but I mean, the Good Rats had, 10, 11, 12 albums out. And some of them were pretty big. You know, they got radio airplay. They opened for Rush and Journey and big bands back in the day. So the majority of our set is old Good Rats tunes, which really only old Good Rats fans remember at this point. But we keep the music alive for Pepe. He wrote all the songs. And that's what that's what he wanted us to do. That's what he wanted us to do, is carry it on,
Right. And he's probably looking down going, good job, guys.
Absolutely, And he was a great singer and a great songwriter. So it's cool to play with his son. And I've known them and been friends with them for years. Actually, my son was the drummer before I got into the band that played bass, because when Pepe passed, Stefan, who's now singing, was playing the bass. So I kind of took over the bass from him, and now he just sings. And he sounds just like his father, which is really cool.
Wow. That must make the fans happy.
Yeah, it does. It really does. If anybody wants to check it out, go look up the album Tasty or Rat City in Blue. Those are the old albums from the 70s, and they were way ahead of the time. It's like a lot of it's progressive, a lot of it's just basic rock and roll, but it was different. Really hard to put a category on. But they were way ahead of the time, so everybody is curious. I mean, we actually still record some new Good Rats songs. What we do is, after his father passed, he found a bunch of old tapes, unreleased songs, just like him and a piano or him and an acoustic guitar. So we wrote the music around his voice, and we recorded it with him actually singing from the original demo, and we just recorded music around his voice, which is kind of cool.
Oh, that's great. It's almost like what they're doing, like with the hologram things nowadays, almost.
Yeah.
That'll be next, right? Coming to a bar near you.
Yeah, he was a very prolific songwriter. Wrote a lot of songs for other artists and stuff too, Meatloaf and a lot of other people. But so I do that. That keeps me really busy, and like I said, it's fun playing with my son. And my son's a pretty successful drummer in his own right. He drums with Jamie Josta from Hatebreed in his solo band.
Oh, okay.
He's a touring drummer. And he's actually going out with a great band in a couple of weeks, a band called Void Evader, another band you guys can look up. Void Evader, they're an LA band, really old school, straight ahead heavy metal type stuff. And they're friends of his, and their drummer can't do this tour, so my son's filling in for that.
That's wonderful.
Really
what about your daughter? Does she do anything in music, or is the music gene pass her?
Yeah, music gene passed her, but she is 7 months pregnant, which means I will be a grandpa in a couple of months.
Oh, congratulations!
Yeah. So
does she know what she's having, or is it?
Yep, she's having a girl. Yeah, she's having a girl.
Aww.
Yep. So I'll be a grandpa shortly. So that's exciting too. That music really is exciting.
That is very exciting. That's adorable. Congratulations. Your wife, you and your wife must be ecstatic.
My wife is she's very, very happy.
Isn't that what you have kids for, to have grandkids?
That's right.
And free labor and grandkids.
That's right. So that's our first one, so we're excited about that.
Oh, that's great. Congratulations.
Thanks. We'll get her into good music, don't worry.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure you got a good solid background teacher there, so I think everything will be just fine. Just put I don't even know if they use headphones anymore nowadays. You know how they used to put it on like women's stomachs, like
right.
and stuff. I don't think that exists anymore, but
Yeah.
But they have those videos like on like YouTube and Facebook with the little kids like with their little horns up and stuff like that. It's the cutest little thing in the world.
Yeah.
So my money's on you. You got it covered.
We'll take care of that. I raised my son had no choice either to like good music, because growing up, that's all he heard in the car was Thin Lizzy, and that's our favorite band, Thin Lizzy, and stuff like that.
Okay.
And by the time he was 10, 11 years old, he was into good music. He was playing drums in heavy metal bands from the time he was 13. So
successful dad achieved.
Yeah. So keep it in the family. It's good.
Exactly. So, in your time in Fates Warning, is there any particular show or any that stands out that's like a really memorable moment for you that surpasses everything?
I don't know one particular show, but I think one of the funnest little mini tours we did was back in 1989, I want to say. We did like a 10-show run over in Europe called the Christmas Metal Meetings. And it was Man of War headlining. I love Man of War. I know they're corny and all, but I still love them. Saxon, was still one of my top 10 favorite bands, Saxon. And Lizzie Borden. And a band called Sabbath, which
I know who they are. Yeah,
and we had a lot of fun with them. That's Andy Sneap was in the band back then. In fact, I was just messaging back and forth with him the other day about the old that tour. We shared a bus with those guys, and they were so funny. It was like sharing a bus with Monty Python for a couple of weeks. So we had a really, really good time.
That must have been interesting.
It was. And Saxon was great to hang out with them every night. Like, I was a huge Saxon fan, so it was like,
what's that song? Denim and Leather, right?
Denim and Leather, yeah.
Denim and Leather, yeah.
That was probably one of my favorite tours. That was good. But we had a lot of good
What about
shows,
a favorite album that you worked on by Fates Warning? What would you say is maybe you enjoyed the most, or is just your favorite album?
I think it's a controversial thing, but there's a lot of people either love or dislike this album. But I think Parallels was our best album that we did when I was in the band. It was kind of different. A lot of people said it was too commercial, blah, blah, blah. But it was just, we didn't do it on purpose. It's just the way it came out. It was a little more accessible. I think, and we worked like the longest. We took a long time to write and record that album. We got to work with Terry Brown, who produced it he produced all the Rush albums. So that was a huge thrill because I'm a huge Rush fan.
Yeah.
So he did a great job producing it, and I think it's their best album from start to finish all the way around. So I would say that was my favorite. I really don't, the first album or two were kind of rough. We were just kind of starting out. The production wasn't that great and that kind of stuff on the first one or two. Awaken the Guardian, obviously, is the one that really put us into some prominence. It gave us a lot of attention. And still to this day is probably most people's favorite.
That and Night on Brocken, I hear a lot of, heavy, Fates Warning fans, they say Night on Brocken all the time.
Yeah, that was our first one. Which was basically a demo. And we went to a studio here in Connecticut, never having recorded before. The guy who mixed it and engineered it was not a heavy metal guy at all. The production is what gets me on that album. Production is kind of yucky. Use a lack of a better term. And those are the first songs we wrote. So it's cool that a lot of fans like that. It's like I like a lot of bands I like. I love their first album, even though it's not their most polished or whatever. So I get where people come from with that, but it's not my particular favorite.
It's usually like the progression of a lot of people like maybe the first 3 albums by a band or the first 2, and it's usually like that, like Slayer, Megadeth, Anthrax, like things like that, and then people start to get a little disillusioned as the albums go on sometimes, depending upon the band, that is.
Well, and plus, like we were talking earlier, our styles changed pretty dramatically after the first couple from album to album. Every album is really different. And whether that was just our maturing as writers and different members brought different styles. So a lot of people, I'm the same way. I mean, this album's not nearly as good as the last one. It's different. They changed, like when Rush changed, and they had all the synthesizers and keyboards. Back then, I said, man, I hate this. Sucks, man. It's not old Rush. Looking back, I love it now. I mean, I love those albums now.
Right.
So, but at the time, it was like, I missed the 20-minute long songs and stuff,
Right,
so,
exactly.
So we lost some fans along the way, and we gained some more on the way. And before I forget to mention this, the latest Fates Warning album, Theories of Flight, I love that record. I think it's my favorite album they've done since I left the band. So it was really fun to play those songs live with them guys. It's really, really great record. Love it.
Yeah, and I know right now it's Ray, Jim, Joey, and Bobby. I don't know how to say his last name.
Bobby Jazarmbek, was playing drums.
There you go. Thank you.
and they have a touring guitar player, Mike Abdow, who's from this neck of the woods. He's from Massachusetts. A really, really good guitar player. A really nice kid. He's not. I think he might do a solo or two on the albums, but he's mainly just does the tours. Really, really nice addition. Also.
So getting a backstage pass is not a problem, huh?
No.
You have some clout with those guys, right?
Yeah, it's great. Like I said, it's really great that I get along with them again. And we're all
right.
We're all
do you
buddies,
keep in contact with them? Like, do you hang out with them at points or anything?
Hanging out is probably not the right term. Like, we all live all over the country. You know, Jim lives up in New Hampshire. John still lives in Connecticut, so I do see him on occasion at a show. Or Vic, the original guitar player. I see at some local shows. You know, I ran into John at the Judas Priest Uriah Heep show here a couple of months ago. But I don't really hang out with him anymore, but we're definitely on good terms, you know.
Do people still recognize, like they say, oh my God, you're from Fates Warning?
Yeah, you know, especially you know, here in Connecticut, you know, so I know a lot of people from the old days, and there's a good amount of Fates Warning fans here since we were all originally from here. So yeah, I still get recognized every now and then.
Right.
But,
so in comparison to, I guess, the old days, what are your thoughts about the metal scene then and now? What do you think about what's currently going on in the state of metal today?
I like a lot of it. Like I said, having a 23-year-old son helps because I probably wouldn't have heard half the bands that are around now without him, you know. There was a period where I didn't listen to anything, you know, metal-wise at all. But there's a lot of great new bands. I'm trying to think of who I've been listening to lately. It's because I listen to so many different types of music, not just metal. I listen to pretty much everything but rap and pop country. I can listen to, you know, old stuff, new stuff. I mean, but there's a lot of good new bands. You have to look a little harder these days, you know. My favorites are still the old timers, you know, Saxon. I just went and saw Saxon again, but I just wanted to see them recently. And I still listen to a lot of the older stuff, you know, Rory Gallagher and Thin Lizzy and stuff like that. But there are a lot of great new bands out there. Of course, I can't think of any right now because I'm on the phone with you. But
I know that's.
But thanks to my son, I mean, I am aware of a lot of the newer fangled bands, which and there's a lot of good stuff. There's a lot of real good stuff. You know?
Do you think the scene has improved, or is it or is it different? Is it the same? Is it? What do you think? Like I'm sure you've seen a lot of how it was in the '80s. You know, guys with long hair and stuff like that. And I think today people just don't do that today for some reason.
Not as much, you know, like the band Void Vader that I was talking about. They're a bunch of young guys, and they got the long hair, and they play like Maiden, and they sound like they should have been around 25 years ago, and they're great. There's a lot of those types of bands out there, but it's hard to get recognition. I think what's changed the most, not really musically, but the industry has changed so much. I feel so bad for kids my son's age because it's even harder to get noticed, you know. Nobody buys records anymore. It's really hard. It's like my son's, you know, he's having a hard time finding a band, sticking with it, and to get attention, you know. So he's mostly playing.
Right.
He's basically a hired gun at this time. You know, he goes out with bands that hire him to play for.
Do you think maybe it's oversaturated these days because now you have the internet? You know, people don't do demos anymore. They do. You know, it was word of mouth. Now it's anything you could find it on the internet if you look hard enough.
Exactly. And there's so many bands out there. How does one stand out over the other? You know, really so much luck involved, and it's tough. It's tough for the younger generation of metalheads, I'm afraid. I'm finding out the hard way.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of good bands out there, though.
Right. If there was a band that you could play with, new or old school, who would it be? Besides Fates Warning.
That is a tough one.
You could pick two.
Well, my favorite band of all time is Thin Lizzy, but obviously I couldn't play in Thin Lizzy because, you know, Phil Lynott was the bass player.
If you could, that'd be phenomenal. I'd love to know how you did that.
Yeah. I would love to have been able to play with Rory Gallagher, another one of my favorites, and Gary Moore. Those types of bands. But it's hard. That's a tough one. It's a tough one. I'm going to say Rory Gallagher.
Okay. Who's the rock star that makes you fan out the most? Like, be like, oh my God, I can't believe I met you, or you'd want to meet?
Again, it would be Phil from Thin Lizzy, but unfortunately he's not around anymore. So,
right.
Any of the guys from Thin Lizzy would be great. In fact, everybody I like is dead. I'm thinking to myself at this point. All my favorite bands are all gone. Let's see. Yeah, Murray Gallagher's not with us anymore. And I would love to meet Rush and hang out with Rush, one of my favorite bands. Also, Geddy Lee's a huge hero of mine.
Yeah,
and,
Geddy Lee, him and Neil Peart, forget it. I mean, they're all phenomenal.
Yeah. But yeah, that would be one of them. Definitely Rush, for sure.
Okay. And last but not least, this is a time where you can tell everybody where they can find you, and they can learn all about what you're up to, learn about your history and Fates Warning and what you're currently doing, and where they can find you next.
Yeah, well.
And show their support.
Yeah, well, I am on Instagram, DiBiase812 on Instagram. That's probably where you can get updates. I don't have my own website or anything of that nature. And the next thing you can probably look out for is this project I'm doing with Glenn Jover, which I'm really excited about. Don't even have a name yet, so I can't even really promote it. And hopefully,
and potential cobblatory.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about it because we met on the road, and Glenn came out to a show, and we all kind of hung out for a while and talked about how cool a possibility that would be. But it's, that's kind of a long-term project. We'll see what happens. Hopefully, I'm not sure what Fates Warning's future holds, but I'm always open to filling it again, like I have a couple times in the last year or two. Or we also did the Awaken the Guardian anniversary show a couple of years ago, and we've done parallels anniversary shows. We get that original lineup together, so there might be something in the future, that
wonderful
of that nature. I'm hoping nothing in plans yet, but I'm constantly playing my bass, so I'm always prepared for whatever happens. So I'm not hanging up the strings yet.
It's in your blood forever and ever.
Yep. So.
Well, I really want to thank you for taking the time to speak with me today and to let us know all about everything. And whenever you have updates about when you're playing with Good Rats, if you're playing with Fates Warning, if whoever you're playing with, just let us know. I'll share it on the blog. I'll share it on Instagram, so that people know where you're at and they can come and see you. That's awesome. I'm really appreciate you having me on, and we'll stay in contact, and I'll let everybody know what's up. Wonderful. Thank you, Joe, so much for talking with us. I really appreciate it. Have a great evening. Yeah, you too. Thanks. My pleasure. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Hey, Metalheads. Thanks for listening to our third podcast, and a very special thanks to Joe DiBiase from Fates Warning for a fantastic interview. Don't forget to check out Joe with the Good Rats. You can visit their site at goodrats.com to find out all the latest news and updates. I also want to take this time to thank all of you for your support of the Metal Wire. I couldn't have done it without you, and I look forward to interacting with all of you. Also, special thanks to those behind the scenes who helped me nurture my metal baby and support its growth. Very special thanks to Jerry Gonzalez for all your hard work on the podcast. Don't forget to stop by and check out more of his stuff at jerrygonzalezdesign.com. I close this podcast with a clip of the track Discordia from the new album by Walls of Blood, the new project led by former King Diamond and Megadeth guitarist Glenn Drover, along with current Queensryche vocalist Todd LaTorre and Joe playing bass on the track. As always, you can find us at themetalwire.com or on Instagram at _metal_wire or the Metal Wire Facebook page. Thanks again, and remember to always keep it hard, keep it heavy, and keep it metal. See you next month.